Okay, we're going to talk about comping properties using a micro-market strategy. A micro-market is basically anything that is a sub-market of another market. For example, if you have a county could be considered its own real estate market, and but maybe the zip code is a micro market, and you can take micro markets down to the smallest degree to basically street level or even the 4 or 5 houses around a particular property. But what we're going to do today is we're going to focus in on um, a property of a given address, and I'm going to analyze it like we were looking at it from a micro market perspective. Okay, so let's first of all, let's identify the property. It's 4304 Fawn Lane in Smyrna, Georgia. I've never analyzed this property. Now, our company did buy and renovate a house on the street, so this kind of helps me. I know the area a little bit. And I'm using some tools, of course, Google Street View. I'm using our GIS map, and most markets will have publicly available GIS maps available to them that can be used for various purposes, from looking at flood zones, looking at tax data and information. It just depends on the area of the country and how robust your GIS is. So we can use that. What I'd like to do about this is, of course, the city has everything mapped out here. 4304, you can see it's just a normal lot, and it looks like it's in the city limits of Smyrna based on that yellow shading. All right, so let's move over to the MLS. First thing I'm going to do on the MLS. Now, if you don't have access to your own local MLS, we really need to try to get that for you through a relationship with a realtor. But let's just assume everybody does. Every MLS is going to be different. Our MLS is put out through CoreLogic. There are other MLS systems, Paragon and some others. It just depends on your local one, but they all should be able to do about the same thing. The first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to go over here to public records, and CoreLogic has a product called Realist. And of course, it's taking just a little bit of time here. Let's see if I can change networks and get a better. What are the odds? Okay, we have the records up on Realist, and like I said, every MLS should have something to this degree, and we're going to type in our address real fast. Fawn Lane. And let's see what comes up. The tax report's going to show square footage, what it sold for, when it last sold, who owns it now, all the normal information that we're going to be able to get from the county records. The subdivision is going to be important as well, particularly if there's several dozen houses in the subdivision. Looks like the MLS had it advertised at 1790, but the tax records had it at 2490. It's going to show the number of bedrooms and baths. Like I said, all the pertinent information. This is basically where Zillow gets its information as well. And so this is the property we're going to comp. Now, let's forget about the fact that it sold in 2014 for 165. What we want to know is, what is it worth today if we were going to renovate it? We need two values: an after repair value, so a fully renovated comp analysis, and then a current condition value. Current condition value basically means, what is it worth if we put it on the MLS in the condition that it's in. And so we want to evaluate that. Now, let's assume that I've been in this property, I've taken pictures, I have a whole mock-up of what the repairs, etc., are going to be, right? That's what you do on the acquisition side, is you come up with a number of the repairs you think it needs, and then of course we start our homework from there and the pictures. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to find a comp to get our current condition value that's similar to what we have here, And then we're going to look at our aftermarket value or after repair value. So first things first, though, we have to identify the micro market, right? So the city of Smyrna, I already know based on my knowledge, my headspace that I be into the market, that Smyrna is a good area. It's an area where millennials are buying. It's in Cobb County. The taxes are lower. It's close to Atlanta. That's where the Atlanta Braves Stadium is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Smyrna is a growing area and a very hot residential market for basically the under 40 crowd, but primarily the under 30 crowd. So we're going to go to the MLS, and then I'm going to, first of all, see if anything has sold on the street. So I know my county. I'm going to punch that in, and then I'm going to punch the street name in. And that's where we're going to start. And it looks like we have 2 active. Let's click the pending mark. Nothing pending. Anything contingent with due diligence? No. Anything contingent with a kick out? That didn't change anything. And then let's look at solds for the past 180 days. Now, we talk about in the dispositions manual about a 30, 60, and 90-day picture. We want a 30-day picture. So if we put in 30 days, it looks like nothing. I still only have 2 matches. Nothing is sold in the past 30 days. If we look at 60 days, I have 1 sale. And if I look at 90 days, how many sales do I have? Still only 1 sale, right? We have 3 matches, 2 of them were active, and only 1 sale in the past 90 days. All right, so then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to just to shorten this video a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and make this a 180-day rollback, and that is typically where the appraiser is going to go, is 180 days. But we still only have 2 matches on that street. So let's just take a look at the street micro market for now. And I'm going to put my results up here, and we have a property that's 293,000, been dropped twice. One that's 350, been dropped, and one for 255 and 298. Now this one is not in the same subdivision. I think what I need to do is go in here and put the street suffix. Fawn Lane is what we're interested in. Yeah, Fawn Lane, not Fawn Street. Okay, so now this is not a lot of sales, right? We have one at 255 and one at 298. So I'm going to look at those and try to figure. I might thumb through these photographs and just kind of see what we have. Nice little house, and just getting ideas of what this particular house is, and letting my mind fill with what the market is. It's 1,436 square feet. It's sold for, looks like 255,000. It was only on the market 36 days. Okay, and then let's look at this one that sold for 298. This was actually our company renovation here. So I'm going to go and look at this. I never did care for all this teal. It actually looks way better in person than it does right there. This is a project that we had spent, I think, close to $75,000 on, opening up walls and all that good stuff, making it appear open, and it was a complete renovation from top to bottom. Okay, so that one, I already know that one, and I can see that it sold for $298,000, $5,000 in closing costs, and sold in 12 days. All right, so we have that. Now, that's not enough data. 2 solds and 1 active. Let's look at the 1 active. I think I know this property. Yeah, the guy paid way too much, put way too much into it, didn't stage it, didn't finish it up right. Again, this is a house flip where somebody went in, paid too much, and now the comps don't justify what he's asking for the property, and it's just sitting there. This thing literally has been sitting. If we look at the history on it, that's always good in the active listings, is look at your history. He paid $225 for it, which is way too high based on my knowledge of the neighborhood. And it was listed in August. 4 months later, still sitting on the market. Okay. All right. Always look at your history. That tells a lot of information if you can figure that out. All right. Now, I'm not happy with only 3 comps. So I'm going to go in now and I'm going to expand my micro market. I've taken the street micro market and I've looked at that, but now I want to expand it. I'm going to expand it out into the subdivision. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to delete my street. And the subdivision was Deerwood. So we're going to punch in Deerwood. And that gives me 12 matches. So that's obviously a lot better. And let's look at our results again. And you can see that the solds here, let me zoom in a little bit. The solds are anywhere from 344 all the way down to 225. So what we want to understand is if we're looking at our comp over here at 4304 Fawn Lane, which one of these houses in this neighborhood shows us kind of a current condition value? Well, normally you're going to go and you're going to take the lower price point, right? Let's look at this one for 225. All right, so first of all, it's not the same style. It's ours is a ranch, and this one looks like some sort of two-story. So, but it's all we have to go on right now. So let's just kind of thumb through the photographs and see where we are. You know, based on what I'm seeing here, probably needs a roof. Okay. Looks like it has newer windows, and they've done some updates on the outside. Nice front porch, single car garage. Needs some updating, right? But nothing terrible, right? Looks like the new tile, maybe they've upgraded a countertop, but you know, they've done some very, very soft and minor renovations to it. But the windows are new, and of course that adds some value. Really tiny, non-updated kitchen at all, right? So take that into consideration, but it's clean. It's not a total mess. Very clean. The laundry's downstairs. It hasn't been moved upstairs. That's a big selling feature when we can move them upstairs. And there you go. That's the closest one to the current condition value. Now, only having one comp at a current condition value. Let's just go back here and look at maybe the next price, 255. This one sold on Fawn Lane, Little Ranch. Let's check it out. Gonna thumb through the pictures. This one's updated, right? It's soft updated. Normal Mr. and Mrs. homeowner live here, and they've just updated it as they've updated it over the years. They didn't blow it out like a big house flip or anything, didn't open up walls, didn't make the floor plan more functional. They just kind of used what they had. And they did move the washer and dryer upstairs, which is nice. It's always a big deal, especially in these older ranches around us. And so you're kind of going through and you're seeing what this one is, just a normal mom and pop sale. Okay. Now, our house, let's just assume our house is in worse condition than both of these. Where are we going to go to find these comps? Well, there's a couple places. Now, I'm going to stick in here for a second. We're looking for current condition value. We have 3 properties on the market, all of them well over 300. We have one pending here. Let's look at it real fast. This one's pending. You know, it's grandma's house. Roasted red pepper. Newer kitchen. But, you know, I mean, it's pending and it looks like it's probably in pretty good condition. They've maintained it. It just needs some cosmetic updating. I mean, and that's under contract somewhere, I'm assuming around the 288 mark. It was only on the market 7 days. So clearly it's an area people want to be in. So let's go back to we can't really use that one, the pending one. And we're going to assume that our house is in worse condition, this one for 225. Now, what we want to know is, are there any off-market sales? How do we find the off-market sales? Well, on your MLS, you should be able to find some tax records or something like that. So let's go back to our little tax record here that we were on before. And now this time, I am going to hope it loads quickly. Sorry, gang, up in my office, and it's not the fastest internet on the wireless up here. All right, so I'm gonna kind of load in some generic search parameters here. So I know it's the city of Smyrna, so I'm gonna punch that in, and I want that subdivision, Deerwood. Now, not all MLSs maybe have the ability to do this, but we're gonna use what I have here. Apply. And then let's look at anything that is kind of sold, oh, I don't know, in the past in the past 3 years from an investor perspective, just to kind of get a broad overview. Maybe let's call it the last 2 years. So I'm going to go touch in 0101 2016, sorry, 17 to 0101 2019. I'm actually making this a couple days before Christmas 2018, but you get the idea. All right, so now I'm going to hit search. And we have lots of sales, right? And so this map is kind of showing us all of the sales that the tax records are picking up. So I'm going to get rid of the map for a second. I'm going to go into our grid. And now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for investors. What are investors paying for properties in this area? So let's find that out. Okay, so or let's look at low prices in general. Now, in our little system here, and yours could be different. Anytime I see this little camera icon, I can assume it's an MLS sale, almost 99% of the time. So I'm looking for off-market stuff, and what I'm looking for is primarily something that may have been purchased by an LLC or some sort of investment, maybe even a couple of people going in together with different last names. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for, here's an investor LLC property. Creekside Equities, FTH Group. See if there's any more. I don't see the one. I'm really interested in this one for $148,000. And again, I'm just going to keep looking. Then maybe sort by sales price, low to high. Excuse me. Okay. All these appear to be MLS sales. Here's a non-MLS sale. Well, actually, it was an MLS sale. All right, so it looks like we have these three that are all purchased by investors. And it would show when they were purchased as well. So 243 for this one here. Where are my other investor deals? Here we go. These are on the MLS, purchased by LLCs, 225 and 225. Really interesting, right? So I can go, those are showing active markets on the active on the MLS. If we want to, we can double click on this. So it looks like to me, they bought the property and now look, it's listed for $415,000. Oh my gosh, in that neighborhood, never gonna happen. Never in a million years going to happen. Again, let's see what he paid for it, though. It's always important to know what they paid. They paid $225. Again, in my opinion, they paid too much. I think the one that we renovated, we paid, I think, $160 or $170 for. And looks like they put a lot of money into it. Again, if we wanted to, we can go back to the MLS, look at the pictures on 4191 Doeskin. It's not showing up. Maybe has a different subdivision. That's interesting. Or 4191 Deerwood Parkway. I am not. Oh yeah, here it is. Right here, right? They went in and thought they did a chip and join, a Gaines renovation. They did exactly what we opened up the walls. It's a very similar floor plan to the one we had, but did like this really weird, elaborate wet bath and spent all kinds of money that they didn't need to spend. Made it really contemporary looking in the staging. And this is just, I mean, this is not for everybody, y'all. I mean, this is pretty contemporary. And if you know the market, if you look at the comps and study the market, you know, stick with what works. And this is the reason this house is still sitting here. Okay. All right. So this person paid too much. I don't know how we're going to figure out what paying too little is, because you have somebody who paid too much here, in my opinion, somebody paid too much here. This is where when you go and you know the marketplace, you can kind of start to understand so where mom and pop house flippers are and where real investors are. But these people have an LLC, still hasn't sold. But we do know that investors in the past 6 months, 12 months have paid, in the low 200s for these properties. So what it means for us is, if we're going to buy this house on Fawn Lane that we're comping, this one here, we're looking at the micro market. We're trying to figure things out. Maybe I'm going to look now at the elementary school. That's another micro market that you can use. The middle and high schooler micro market. Sometimes the elementary school is really, really good, but the middle and high school are not. And so people will pay more for, and that's the case here. It's where your own market knowledge comes into play. Is that King Springs is a very sought after elementary school. What people do in this area is, in King Springs, they go to middle school. They're either going to move to the suburbs where the middle schools are better, or they're going to put them in private school. And that's how they play this game, real estate game, in this particular part of the county. If you don't know those things when you're doing acquisitions or dispositions, or you fail to study and do enough pre-work on those things, you could be costing yourself and the company that you're working for money, because of the fact that you're not looking for these little micro markets. All right. So in this particular case, King Springs is a hot elementary school. Griffin and Campbell High School, maybe not so much, but the elementary is a big one. Okay. Well, I know this market because of my local knowledge. I'm not really thrilled with what we got going on here from what the investors are paying. And the last time an investor bought a house, it looks like to me, you've got 6/21, 2018, 2/1, 2018, and 5/24. So no investor has bought a house in the last 7 months in this particular neighborhood. And maybe the reason is they're looking at the market, and the stuff that's on there right now is overpriced and sitting around, and they can't get a low enough price. All right, so going back to our property, we're trying to figure out the current condition value. We have studied what other investors are paying, right, by going through the tax records and seeing what they paid. And we have to figure out now, what are we going to pay for this house? Well, let's just assume for a second. I've explained that these properties are overpriced. Let's just assume, let's look at a house that has sold at market value and see where we are. Let's look at the one we did on Fawn Lane. We sold for $298,000, paid $5,000 buyer's closing costs. Let's look at the realist report on this one. The tax report. It shows that we paid $150,000. Okay, so we paid $150,000 for that house, sold it for $298,000. I'll tell you, we put about $70,000 or $80,000 into it, and that was a good flip net profit, right? Now, $150,000. What if I could have found that investor that would have paid $225,000 for it? We probably wouldn't have done the renovation at all, because our profit would have been just as good selling it to a buy and hold, or an LLC or some other house flipper who in this particular time frame was willing to pay $225,000. So this particular house was completely dated, needed complete updates. I know we put $70,000 into it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the property that we have under contract here. Let's assume that we have this under contract for $170,000. So at $170,000, we have options now. We're looking at this from a micro market perspective. At $170,000, we know that 6 months ago, investors were willing to pay $225,000. That number could change as the market softens. Maybe investors don't pay as much. But what we want to make sure that we can guarantee that we make money multiple ways, that the company can make money keeping it as a buy and hold investment, potentially, keeping it or selling it as a wholesale, selling it as a wholetail, and also as a flipped property. All right, so so we want the current condition value. So let's say that we have this one under contract for $170,000. And it needs $55,000 in repairs. So $170,000, if you're taking notes, $55,000 in repairs. So $170,000 plus $55,000 in repairs, we would be all into this house at $225,000. Now, the way we run our formulas here at Nice Guys Buying Houses is I like to take the market value, the after repair value, and do the quick formula of the 70% rule, right? So let's go back and look at what we think market value is on this particular house. I'm going to guess it's somewhere around 275 to 300. If I'm looking at the properties that have gone under contract, here's one at 298. That's ours. Here's one at 295. Not a ranch, but a nice property nonetheless. Similar square footage. Here's one that sold for 300. This looks like a renovated project. It sure is. That's a house flip. Stayed fairly conservative on everything. Didn't really open up a wall. Okay, so it's super nice. I'm sorry, I'm thumbing through these pictures really quickly. So that one's 300. Let's just assume that this house that we have now under contract over here at 170 and needs 50,000 in repairs. Let's just assume that that house is, we think, when did this one sell? This one sold in July. I want to go back and look at these closing dates. Yeah, it's still September. This one sold for 344 in October. Let's look at it. I remember this one. I wonder if this is the same investor. Those are the same light fixtures. It sure looks like it, doesn't it? Somebody went in there and that looks very similar to the one we just looked at that I thought was kind of ugly. But it's a 4-bedroom. 4-bedroom, 2-bath. It's 2,200 square feet, so not quite a very good comp for us. So we're going to go in now and we're just going to look at this property and we're going to say that it's worth, I'm going to say 300. There's one more. Nice property. Doesn't appear to be a flip. I don't think. How would we know if it's a flip? Well, we can go down here and look at the tax record. And most MLSs have this link into the tax record, and you can see that Mr. John Heath bought the house in 2013. Oh, wait, let me see something here. Okay. This is back in the recession. Somebody paid $128 for it in 2013, sold it for $204 in 2013, and then this C&G Realty must have used it as a rental. Maybe they renovated it, and now they sold it for $315 to John Heath, who currently lives in the house. So it does look like it was some sort of investor flip. All right. Let's go back here. That's $315. It's got more square footage. I'm going to sell in on a market value just for the sake of time at or around 290 to 300. Let's just call it, let's say the market's shifting somewhat. Prices are going to be feeling some pressure, so I want to get it at 290. I know we sold the last one at 298, but I want this one to sell at 290, and if we're able to sell it for more, then great. So if you run the 70% rule, that gets you to 70% of 290 is 203,000 if you're using a calculator, and then you subtract your repairs of 50,000 and you're at 153,000. So based on the 70% rule, we should be paying 153 for the house that we currently have under contract for 170. Now, here's where you have to start making some decisions. The 70% rule guarantees you multiple exits of wholesale, flip, wholesale, and keeping it as a buy and hold rental property. This property would probably rent for $1,500 to $1,800 a month. I wouldn't be super excited about paying $170 for it, putting $50 in it for it to rent for $1,800 a month. That's not a good return for me, so that rules out the rental. However, at $153,000, I should bring up my calculator. At $153,000, so let me just run that math one more time. We said the property was $290, and then we're going to multiply it times 0.7. Then we're going to subtract our repairs of $50,000, and that gives us, oops, what did I do there? One more time. 290 times 0.7 minus 50,000. 153. All right. In this area, though, our company, if we're going to flip, we're a flipping company. If we're going to flip it, I'm okay moving up to 75%. So let me look at that real fast because I don't have to build in a wholesale fee necessarily. So I'm going to say ARV is after repair value is 290 times 0.75 minus repairs. There we go, 167,500. We're about $2,500 off on this particular house. If I have it under contract at 170, am I going to let $7,500 or $2,500 mess me up? Probably not. We might go back and ask for a price reduction based on something that we may have found in the home inspection and get that number where it needs to be. But for the most part, right there is where our number is going to be for a flip. Now, if you want to wholesale this property, right, you have to get it a little bit less. Or you look at what other investors are paying, like we did in the micro market, look at what other investors are paying. And if you know what the other investors are paying, particularly the individual investor, so what I mean by that is, let's just say 123 Main Street LLC has bought 15 houses in Smyrna. Do you think they like Smyrna? Absolutely they do, right? So, and if you study your competition and know that 123 Main Street LLC is paying X amount of dollars for houses, we can almost go in and guarantee what they'll pay us for our house, right? And you might want to pick up the phone and call them first and say, hey, we have a deal. Are you interested? Of course, we want to send it out to everybody in our buyers list. But if we have people that we know that are super interested in the city of Smyrna, why wouldn't we leverage those relationships, or at least try to build relationships with those people? So the micro market is big. Now, one thing that we haven't really hit is, what are other micro markets to consider? Well, we talked about King Springs Elementary, didn't we? We could take this a different direction. Let's go back to our criteria, and let's delete Deerwood, and and let's put in our elementary school, just our elementary school by itself, King Springs. All right, now we have 148 matches that have popped up down here in the lower part of it kind of updates down here in the lower left-hand side of the screen. 148 matches. So that is that's too many matches. I don't want to look at all those. But we know our comp is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, right? So that narrowed it down to 49 over here. And we know it was built in like 1975 or whenever it was built. So I'm just going to kind of punch in some 1960 to 1980. That's going to whittle it down to 26 matches. That might be enough for you to be able to go in and do your analysis. But let's just keep going. We know that our house is a ranch. And so let me see if I can find the style here. It's a 1-story. That takes it down to 22 matches. All right, now, I mean, we can go back and look at the results and see what we've got going on. We have 22 matches now in the elementary school zone. Now, what are the dangers? Well, the dangers of this now are you're comping properties outside of the neighborhood. We've got the same micro market of the elementary school, but we've deleted the micro market of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is going to be a lot more restrictive in value, but it's going to give you probably a more accurate assessment. So if you go now and look, I mean, I know, for example, because of my market knowledge again, that Bennett Woods is a nicer subdivision. It just is. You drive through it and you're like, oh, this is definitely nicer than Deerwood. But let's just take a peek at some of these. All right, here's a cute little ranch. The ranches typically are a little bit bigger. This is a flip. Looks like a flip. Maybe, maybe not. They've opened up a bunch of walls, whatever, who knows. And so you can look through there and you can see the square footage. Our house, I think, was like 1,500 square foot. So you got to take that into account. This one's a little bit larger. So you're always looking at the square footage, trying to figure out what's going on. So that's the danger that you face when you go outside of your smallest micro market and you start expanding out. But that's my philosophy. You start small inside the neighborhood, inside the subdivision. If it's not a subdivision, maybe you go two or three streets in any direction, and then you filter those by the elementary school, right? Because what happens if you have, here's a question for you. What happens if you have a house on one street that you're comping, but then 2 streets over, the elementary school changes to a much better elementary school, and your comp, you get all excited about this higher price comp, but the reason it's higher price is because it has a different micro market. So you see the value in these micro market analysis. You can either start at a micro level and expand out as you need the comps, or you start looking at the maybe a zip code level, then an elementary school or a high school level, then any combination of those schools, and then you drill down into the subdivision. That's how you analyze properties on a micro market. If you don't analyze on a micro market, you could end up overpaying or underpaying for a property, or not getting a deal under contract because you don't understand. You don't understand the local dynamics. Every street has a micro market to it. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your direct report with any of the information or questions you might have, something I might have forgotten in this video. And best of luck as you go out and you comp properties for acquisitions and dispositions, and lead managers as well. I think this is good training for all three.